Let's get
What's
to it.
going
Let's
on?
get to it. Let's get it.
Haha.
You about to start rhyming? Let me know. Let me know
Hey,
if I
man.
if
Hey,
I
listen, I'm gonna tell you what. I went to a teen mic down in Fort Lauderdale one day, and I was there with Christopher Dortz and Lena Paris and Stitches and a few other people like Maui. But anyway, Stitches has this thing where she asks for everybody to like bust a rhyme. And so, somewhere out there in this world, there is a short segment of me rapping
uh-oh.
in the last 60 days,
let's
freestyling.
ma- let's
Somewhere
make
out
that
there in
go
the social
viral.
media
Let's
world
make
is
let's
there.
we don't have it. We can't get
I
I
ain't
can't we
got it,
can't get a
man.
copy of it.
I don't know where it is. I don't know where it
Can't
is.
get a
The people
copy.
that be have it and have not sent it to me. So I don't know where it is, brother.
All right. Well, if you all have it and you're tuning in, please send it to Michael D. Seville at
Don't send it to him. Send it to me.
gmail.com. Send it to Michael D. Seville at gmail.com so we can give the
Yeah,
brother his
yeah,
5 mics. Man, it's
yeah.
another day. It's another way. I am Palm Beach Mike Seville here in northern Palm Beach County. Shouts out to everybody out there. This is Community Beacon. It is Friday. On the other side of the screen, if you're following me and you're not following him, go ahead and follow him. This is Joel Simmons. And if you're following Joel and you're not following me, vice versa,
That's
this
right.
is the incomparable Joel Simmons, who I was blessed to serendipitously, serendipitously synchronicity was it synchronicities I don't meet up. I mean, I think it's so awesome. Think about this, like there's 24 hours in a day, you know vast amounts of land. There's people are doing any and everything, and just so happen to see the brother as I'm walking into the gym. He's driving and he pulled over and he saw me. You just got to think about that kind of things, something that's happened. I'm grateful that things like those happen. It just kind of reminds me of just being in sync and the consciousness. So I was able to see the brother as he was walking out the gym. He was hungry, but I was blessed enough to greet him. And it's always good to greet the brother, because when the brother is around, it's what I was thinking earlier today when I was thinking about that situation was John the Baptist and Jesus, and they were in the womb, right? Jesus was in the womb of Mary, and John, was it Sarah? Who was it? Who was John's mother?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. There we go. And they say that the spirit just jumped, like they felt it. So it's good to be around people. When you get around them, the spirit just jumps. So pray. So I thought that was awesome, brother. Good to see you. And we, it was by happenstance. We didn't intend on that happening, but it did happen. So always good to be around a brother. If you have a chance to be around a brother, I'm sure you would say the same thing.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. I was man when I got in the car and I was like, oh my gosh, is that? Oh man, celebrity spotted. Yeah, y'all. I almost park my car in the middle of the road.
I agree. Listen, if you have a chance to be around me, you are blessed.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
are
yeah,
blessed. And if I'm in interacting with you and sometimes I'm not in the mood. Sometimes I'm in there and I'm just so laser focused. That's another thing about Mike. That's a habit of mine as we get into the conversation.
as we
Is
get into it.
I get into this place where it's just boom. You know what I mean? And I know it. I'm in flow and there's nothing. There's blinders on. And that often takes place at the gym. So if I've
Yeah,
seen you in the gym and I haven't said anything to you, it's because I'm so laser focused. And this is a habit that I've always done it, but it was good to hear Arnold Schwarzenegger speak about something similar, where he says, he's like, there's nothing when when he used to be in the gym, it was just this, or getting ready for a bodybuilding event. Like he was just so laser focused on it that's all it was, what it was about. And it's awesome to have that kind of connection when you're in there. Mind body muscle connection is what some people call it. But yeah, yeah. So is it blame it on my blame it on my mind and not my heart, because my heart wants to reach out to each and every one of you all if we do ever cross paths. So we ready?
Yeah, man. I thought you was about to start singing "Blame It on the Rain," so I was just getting ready. Tape this thing, y'all. Tape it. Tape it. Tape it. Tape it.
No, not today. Not
Not today.
today.
All right. All right. Well, they didn't sing it
Um,
in that day either, so don't worry
I
about
did,
it.
yeah, I did not then, not now, but it might be. You may catch me if I
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
this
yeah.
thing off of mute and we start the stream. You might catch me dancing and singing or whatever it is to whatever I'm vibing to.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Environment and energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Habit.
I think this is super important. This part, especially in regards to the environment, and they kind of coincide and go together. Uh, there's a couple things that shape behavior, right? There's three core things that shape behavior on like the foundational level. Very, very important. Very, very important. And one is your biology. That's going to shape your behavior because if depending on what's going on inside of you, your chemistry, like it some people are doing things that they don't want to or even know that it's happening. Their body's telling them to do it. There's signals that's being spent. And thank God we're not talking about that because I don't want to go into a biology lecture. But do a deep dive into that if you want. And then you got cultural. You got your cultural identities. Excuse me, your cultural behavior. So this is like shaped by the culture. It's going to be immediately, normally they'll say it's your parents, your mother and your father, or the people who were growing up. Definitely your mother. While you were in the womb, you were taken in, you were being indoctrinated into a culture. So if that's similarly why if you grew up in an Islamic place, you're probably going to be Islam. If you grew up in a Christian place, more likely you're going to go towards there. This is just embedded within you. And then and not to say that none of these things can be changed biology and culturally, that happens to you, those behaviors, because you'll be aware of it. It's something tough. These are biases. And then last but not least is your environment will shape it. So even if you have a different culture, I come from the Caribbean, so my parents, there's that colonialism, so on and so forth, things that happened within Jamaica, that we had a culture, the way that our village was, my mother from the country, my father from the city, so on and so forth. But then I came here and this was a different environment and I was surrounded by different people. As I was going through this, which was interesting because I didn't exactly remember the title, but my higher mind did. And I was thinking about this in regards to real estate. Like your environment, where you live, shapes you. Uh, I used to live on the other side. I used to live in West Palm Beach on the other side of town. The way that I acted and my behaviors were shaped by being in that area. I remember when I used to go downtown or Pinewood in the Northwood area. I had certain behaviors when I went down there. I even had like a long, long time ago. I did a social media post where it says when you're riding from 57th Street to Second Street, you mean mugging. So you're like this. And as soon as you hit Banyan, all of a sudden you start smiling. You in City Place. At the time it was called City Place. It's Rosemary Square now. But you hit Rosemary and you have a different kind of way of being. And it's the consciousness. So your environment really, really shapes a lot of your behaviors. Therefore, shapes your habits. Because like we spoke about last week, or what I kind of interpreted your habits are, it's like these automatic things that are happening. Your habits tend to be automatic. Most of us aren't even aware of some of the habits that we have until we take a self um we do a self check. You know what I mean? We do a self check on like what exactly is going on, especially if you're not going headed in the direction you want to be headed in. You're like, what exactly is going on? You do a self check. So these are the behaviors. So your environment really largely shapes most of your behaviors because I don't act for most people like a Jamaican. You could tell like I got some Jamaican tendencies from the cultural perspective, But overall, it's like, okay, he understands the culture of America. He's in the environment of America, and I act as such. Largely, my parents, depending on what political party you're aligned with in Jamaica, it's a lot of socialism kind of ideals that they have. Where it's more about, from giving from the poor, or excuse me, the rich have too much, the poor need to get some more. They need to be supported. The government needs support, so on and so forth. And now I'm here in America, and definitely, and in Palm Beach Gardens, I'm like a capitalist, right? Like I'm just like, hey, you got to go out there and get it. This is how you grind, and then you kind of pay attention with it. So that's going to be kind of the take that I'm coming on with this environment, and of course, it matches with the energy. What say you, brother?
Man, I don't know where you exactly want to start off because I mean, you kind of just opened up biology, culture, as well as environment and energy, and there's like four different pieces to, I guess, the puzzle that we're going to be discussing today or putting together today. There's so much that you just laid out there as far, when we dive into culture, where the nature of where we came up, how we came up and the people that we come from makes a huge difference. And I like those references that you were giving, especially when you start talking about the culture, being Islamic, versus being Christian versus being Jewish. And all of those things would shape how you comb your hair, what you're doing at midday or where you are at 8 o'clock. There's different times that are built into your mind. And the word that comes to my mind when you stated that was narrative. And so some of the habits that we currently have are based upon the narrative that we were given or that we were taught and trained in. They're learned narratives and they've created learned habits. These habits do not have to maintain our habits. We can change them, but we have to do what we were talking about last week, which was we have to take agency over ourselves, over our soul, our spirit, our mind. So when we take agency over that, then it no longer becomes, I'm doing this based off of the environment I grew up in, but it's based off the environment that I choose to put myself in today or that I decide on today. And therefore, I can decide on what culture I want to follow. I can decide on how I want to use my energy. And so there is a piece to that though when we start talking about biology, that biology we may find that may not be as, I'm not going to say any of these things are necessarily easy. They all take a certain amount of effort, a certain amount of work to be able to do. And you have to be able to break beyond the fatigue point. But whatever it is, when it comes down to biology, there is something that has to deal with biology, the chemicals running through our body, where that might be something that we want to learn more about before we ultimately attempt to override them, because it may be better to flow with the body if the body is flowing in the direction that we want it to go than to try to aggressively confront our body and overthrow our body, especially when we start talking about the biological clock and the habits that we have built up, right? And just to give an example, if you have always gone to bed at 11 or 12, then maybe going to bed at 11 or 12 may be good for you. I don't know. It could be good that you go to bed at 11 or 12 every single night. So you may not want to be like Mike or be like me when it comes down to waking up at 4:30 or 3:30 or whatever. You may not want to do that because you're not able to get enough rest, right? So you may go to bed at 12 and you may want to get up at 6 or at 7 instead, and then take on the day. Now, will you have the same abilities as someone who wakes up at 3 o'clock? Well, there are certain things that are happening at 3 o'clock generally across the world that those of us that wake up at that time take advantage of. For instance, the quiet of the day or the night, the absence of people and thought noise in the world, right? There's a lot less thought noise in the world because people are asleep. So there's not a whole lot of thoughts, a whole lot of conversations going on in the world, and the atmosphere is clear. And therefore, it's easier to get creativity built. out of your own mind, because it's just not a whole lot of energy that is dormant, and you're able to utilize the highest or peak values of your own energy at that time. Well, if you're used to going to bed at 12 o'clock and you trying to get to bed earlier than that, causes your body fatigue and it causes you to burn out, then maybe it's a better idea for you to go in a different direction, right? Go to bed at 12, wake up at 6 or 7, and find another quiet point in the day or a quiet place in the day. So I think that circadian rhythms and energy and all that type of stuff. I think that we'll talk a little bit about that. But where do you want to start, Mike? Where do you want to start? At which topic or subtopic of habits and environment energy do you want to start on?
It's a lot. I like how you said. Let me just repeat some things that pulled from it was to create. You know that 3 o'clock 3 a.m. Strategy, or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. There's actually, people have, it's science that supports that between 3 and 5 a.m. that these things will impact you in a positive way, so, especially in regards to creation and being creative at that time, which I think is interesting because that was another stream of thought I had today, which was like creating something, out of nothing. So really getting that deep into it. um I think we should start with like what is healthy. That's where I want to start. Um, because someone said something to me recently, and they said I don't lose weight to get healthy. I get healthy to lose weight. And it kind of set off something in my mind. It was like, whoa, that was just like, whoa. No one's I haven't heard it in that kind of way before, because we're always saying that we need to lose something, we need to change something. But it's interesting where you think of I need to get healthy in order for this, and this thing comes along with it. Some of the benefits come along with it. Now we're talking about our habits and our environment. So it's like, well, let's use healthy in this context of the environment. And I don't know where everybody wants to go in regards to the habits, but sometimes we just go out and we say that we want to change a habit without necessarily understanding the ramifications that come with it. So you mentioned something, brother, that was interesting right now, where you said, well, if we were talking about our biology, maybe you don't want to change these things at this point, because maybe you're not your nature, or what you think that's your nature doesn't necessarily align with these things. Like I want to get this creative flow. I want less think noise going on in the world. I want to get up at 3 o'clock. However, I'm already in that habit, or I have a identity. So at the identity level, I am a night person. Be careful with these labels. I am a night person. Well, what if you started saying, instead of I am a night person and Joel and Mike are morning people, which I think is just not true at all. How about you just say, I want to become a healthy person? So I think when we start to talk about these environments, we need and these habits, as we start talking about these habits, is like, what exactly would it be like to be healthy? Like, what is healthy? That's the question. So, brother, I'd like if you could answer that question. I know, and we just talking, so the brother hasn't had a chance to think about it. But so what exactly could one deem to be healthy, and then let the habits come along with it?
Hmm. Man, that's an interesting question. And I appreciate you tossing it in my direction. I think because healthy to I'll tell you what healthy is to me, right? And I probably will have to define this as things that I do for myself that I believe is healthy, and then maybe from there I could give a definition, right? If I kind of like work this thing backwards from the end to the beginning, and so from the end to the beginning, for me, it's that I prioritize my mind, body, and spirit, right? And what do I mean by that? So I am active in my church environment, right? I believe in giving. I believe in the biblical nature of the Bible and being that type of good neighbor. I believe in following after the commandments of God. I believe in ensuring that my soul is rooted in my faith, and that helps shape the way that I think, the way that I move. And I believe in meditating in that and praying in that and actively pursuing that, because I feel that it fills my void. And it's done that for now, 25 plus years, 25 years, give or take a few months. It has done that for me. And I've been very, very successful. When I wasn't successful in other things in life, this has brought me success. And when I wasn't successful in other things and I leaned on this even more, on my faith, then my faith made me successful in other things. So that has been the root and the fruit of my results. So paired with that is my mind, my mentality, keeping my mind clear and without friction, and learning different things, techniques, gaining knowledge on how to keep my mind from fretting, from becoming overly frustrated or overly angered. And it's not so much about the frustration or the anger. Once again, I want to be cautious because someone may take a label the wrong way, because it's not that I necessarily think that being frustrated or angry or sad or something like that is not necessary, because I think that these are necessary. By us being human beings, I have found that many times the only way we're able to truly understand what is going on in life and what is happening at that very moment is by notating and understanding the feelings, the emotions that come along with it, because it gives a certain perspective that you simply just cannot see when you're only logical. Now, when it comes down to decision makings, that's something totally different. But being able to see a well-rounded picture, I believe that you have to have all of the ingredients to the recipe, so to speak. So for me, becoming mentally strong and working on that daily, because I am approached with day to day circumstances and difficulties and challenges. So becoming mentally strong is not a static thing. It's not like, hey, it's like kind of like people who lift weights. I can lift 100 pounds. I'm good. Well, then you find out that you're challenged with lifting up 120 pounds, and, your life is on the line. So so because you stopped your training, you're unable to do whatever it is that you want to do. And so I believe in constantly improving on my mental integrity and my mental strength. And so those are two things. And then the last one, I guess there would be two more. One would be emotionally sound, and that is the ability to rationally move through emotions. And when I think of emotions, I also think of my environment, especially people, and people, person, places, time, all that type of stuff, but mostly people, and how I react to people and how I respond to people, and and what I share with people, right? Because there is um there is a part of us as human beings that will allow for another person to step into our life and press all the buttons, right? It's like one of those, I don't know if you all remember, I think it might have been Voltron or something like that, and we become like this mega robot, and there's people inside of our arms and legs and our head, and all that type of stuff, and they're constantly pressing buttons and they're making things happen. Which, by the way, I never really understood how, when the guy says, and I'll form the head, how he was able to take control over the feet and the arms. And what did everybody else do? He's just like, all right, that's it. I don't know. Sidebar, right? Sidebar. So let me come back. But I feel like that's what happens with like relationships, is that we allow for people to step inside of our thought process, and they expand themselves. They grow inside of that thought process. And so you can absolutely have 100% control over how you do one thing, but how you do another thing is on somebody else. Or if somebody else walks in the room while you're eating and you've always cut your steak with your left hand, but because they queued up, you should cut it with your right hand. They walk in a room and automatically you switch your fork. And it's like now you're doing something different. And to me, I don't really care how you cut your steak, you know, cut your steak and eat it. Just don't choke. That's what I prefer. Don't die on it. But that's what I mean by relationships, keeping that in balance, keeping it in balance, and knowing where I start and where I stop and somebody else starts, and keeping that boundary line clear so that I know exactly who I am at all times. And then the last one will be my body, and that's one of the ones that I've worked on the most, in the last few years, and that is just health wise, to be strong, to be flexible, and to take care of nutrition as the best that I know how. And meanwhile, as in all the other three categories, to constantly be in learning and expansion of of what what I believe is right for me. And so I guess what I've done is I've created a foundation of all these four avenues of life, and I brought them in together, and I balance everything based off of that, and I weigh everything based off of that. And if I am if I am in the negative zone of that, in other words, if I'm not living up to what I believe I should do, I feel like that's an unhealthy action. If I'm living up to what I believe I should do or am exceeding it, then I believe that that is a positive, uh, or that is a healthy lifestyle. And so every day, as you all have heard me say, where I find myself, I check myself to make sure that I'm still humble and that I'm still able to hear other people and to learn from other people and to gain from other resources, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, so that I can always have a just balance. There's a scripture in the book of Ecclesiastes that says, "An unjust balance is an abomination before the Lord." And so my goal is to keep a just balance so that I can rightly weigh out my own life. And my goal is that I keep it so in tune with my faith that when I die, I will know where I go. So it's kind of like when you go to the grocery store and you're buying groceries and you don't use a calculator, but you're adding up all the prices and you're balancing your budget in your cart. And when you get to the register and you put all the food down and you look at the price and you say, I was off by 50 cents. I did pretty good on that. And so that's the way that I take my life. I want to get to the register. Me and St. Peter will have a laugh, a chuckle, and, he'll weigh out my deeds before my God, and he'll weigh out, how I treated my body, how I treated my mind, how I treated my enemies, my friends, how I treated my faith. And my balance will not come up wanting, and I will know it before I get there. So that, to me, that's a healthy. That's living healthy. That might have been heavy, huh? This is me. This is me. All right, Mike. Don't answer that. Leave that alone. What is healthy to you?
So um, the primary of being healthy to me, well, this is what I know is it's submission and obedience. That's it. That's the primary. Everything else is to me is justification. It's self justification. It's attempting to be righteous. So so it's not about judging it. It's not about This is just about, am I in submission and in obedience? I loved when Dre Taylor brought that up, and he makes it so succinct to where it's like it's not, it doesn't have to be rocket science. Are you in submission and are you in obedience? And here's the thing, oftentimes I'm not. Like it's right. The brother brought up emotions. The brother brought up, whether it's emotional or whether it's logical. There's times when I'm attempting to outthink the obedience and submission. There's times when I don't feel like being submissive and obedient. Uh, a lot of things are just made crystal clear, and it's a willful ignorance. I'm vested in an identity of, whatever it is, in order for me to go a different route. So that's it. Submission and obedience, that's the healthy way. Okay, cool. Now, there was a lot of things that contributed to this so-called identity that I have. So the identity could simply be, the narrative that we spoke about earlier. So there's a narrative that goes along, and once you and I'm totally believing that once you pick these different identities, you have to believe in that narrative. Should I tell the? I'm gonna tell the story, right? I think it's important because just in the identity realm of it, and maybe it'll hit. Maybe this will give a clear understanding of what this identity is. So I remember my youngest child's mother was moving, and on the day of the move, I asked, I was like, "You haven't even given me an address," and I asked the week prior, like, "Where's the address to the move?" And then I remember she texted back because I asked her in a text, like, what's the address? Where's he gonna be moving to? And she said, I'm a single mother and I don't have time to do X, X, and O, you know what I mean? And here's the address. This is the text message. I don't know how long it takes you to send a text message, but the average person, it takes, that's a really a 10-minute text message where you live, right? You've been, if you're moving, you've been doing things all day. You had to change your post office code, you had to do X, X, and O. So to take time out to just change it. However, and this really wasn't the point of it was, once you self-identify as something, whatever that is, you have given yourself the rules to follow. So whatever it is, and it's interesting because you can notice the patterns in people. So if you want to identify yourself as a Christian, I know exactly where you're headed with that. You want to identify yourself as a single mother, I know where you go, or single parent, I know where you're going with that. You want to identify yourself as a Democrat or a Republican or whatever it is, I already know where you're going, right? Because there's a certain narrative, there's an environment, especially, you're starting to attract these things. So there's an environment that you're going to end up in. You're going to end up in this. And so from this point on, you're going to look in that environment that you've accepted, right? You become aware and you've accepted this environment. And you're going to say, I'm going to be like the people, the surroundings, the things that are acceptable within this environment. This is why it's very, very important to, whatever it is that you're deciding on accepting, that it aligns with whatever it is you're going. For me, it's submission and obedience. So whatever it is that I accept as an identity, as a human being, I hope it aligns. So, and shouts out to Toastmasters. When we when we put these things together, when we understand that and we're fully accepting of it, this is not to judge. I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong. You can be whatever you want to be. That's what they say. You can be whatever you can choose. These are decisions that we're making. You sign a contract. This is what I call the commitment. You have a commitment now to this identity. You have a commitment. This is what I call a contract. Other people will say it's a commitment. You are now committed to this thing. So once you are committed to this thing, this is really good, largely as far as environment and energy is concerned, are going to shape your actions. You're going to abide in this way because this is what it is. You have accepted it. A person would call it, this has become, on a larger scale for some of the bigger things, right? I think religion, politics, uh, some people call it white supremacy, but whether you're deciding that you're black or white or whatever it is, you start to abide by these things, and along with those things, they have certain agreements that you're taking on, which is the narrative that you put together. So it's really hard for a person, because most of us have already made this decision. I call it your mother's religion. Most of us have already chosen our mother's religion. By the time we reach a certain age, oftentimes we just return back to it. But this is something that's kind of within us. And so from that point on, this is what we decide on what is healthy and what is not. So it's easier for me to accept those around me once I understand the way that they see the world, right? This is how you tend to see the world based on what you've committed to, what identity you've committed to. And once again, there's don't have judgment towards it. This is where the healthy part comes in. It's not to have judgment towards it. Because these things that we're committed to within them, if we're not following a certain narrative, they have things that are attached to them that keeps you there, which is shames, insult, guilt, and the need to be right. Shout out to BJS Ibmore. It was popularized by Kevin Samuels, but it actually came up. I think it was Ayana Van Zant. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And BGS Ibmore, who spoke about these things. They originally was just shame, insults, and guilt, and then they added the need to be right. This is the righteousness part. And so once we identify with those things, these are the things that keep our environment and our energy in line. Okay, we live in a society where we have changed, in health regards, like we have a lot of obese people. And because our society, it's accepted in our society, it has become the new healthy, right? We change the names to people who are obese. Oh, they're thick, right? Or they're healthy, or they're, so on and so forth. I remember going to Jamaica, and if you had a big stomach, that was like a sign of wealth. Anybody who had a big stomach and kind of sat in a certain place, it was like, oh, he got money, right? Like it was known for this person to have money. So we went to adopt these things, right? We were committed. This is our environment that we're around. But we know that it's not healthy, because what comes out of this ends up being what? Diabetes, which is these are the biggest killers in the world, right? It's heart related diseases, bodily diseases, and diabetes is one of them. We've started to say that now these things are genetics, right? Like your family has a history. This is why this is part of it. Your family has a history of diabetes, so now all of a sudden you're predisposed to it. We don't tend to look at the exact environment, but now the science is starting to prove more and more it's what's in the environment. If you're the types of foods that you eat. We even got a name for going to sleep after you eat, which you're not supposed to get tired when you eat. We call it the itis, right? Any of you all ever had the itis? Oh, that was a good meal. I could just go lay down for I could go lay down for a little bit, right? And so we've made this is I mean this is so interesting to me, is that we've made this um uh uh, uh uh, made this okay. The zeitgeist. This is the environment. So I think I've spoken about it, and there's some good things as well, but you know, like what do you do about it? Right? Like what are we doing about this? We understand that the how that we come up with the healthy, what is healthy, is based on this. This is dangerous, and it's freeing at the same time, right? If you accept this information, it'll free you. So we understand that. How did we come about to getting into this habit, or what we in our minds, what we believe to be healthy? But when we take a step back and we're giving more information, are we going to be accepting of this? Or is it another time for us to kind of say, no, this is not healthy? I can look at somebody and say they're not healthy. Sometimes it's physically, it shows physically, right? And other times it'll be a vibe, right? Like some people call it a vibration. You hug somebody, some things are off. They could be smiling, but you'd be like, this person doesn't seem it, it's betraying them, right? So how do we get to this point of it being actually this, like what is exactly is healthy? And I think you have to go to the base. And a couple weeks ago, I spoke about the set point. Like how do we clear out a lot of these biases, these identities, and ultimately you have to be broken down back to nothing. You have to question everything. right? You have to get to a point where you're questioning what was put in front of me, because I don't want to blame this on our parents, or because they were only given what they've known. So how do we get to the set point? We have to understand what was it like to be originally, and that takes separation, which I'm kind of going back and forth with. So where's the separation, and then you go into the, this is Jungian. Then you go into the individuation, which is like you're becoming your true self, right? This is complete and total alignment, not based on the indoctrination that was given. All right, was that good?
I love it, man. I like that you came back to environment at the end of the day. I do think I think that that being one of our key topics right now, it's important that we really dive into that before we conclude this episode. And there's a lot of things that you started to mention about environment that's just so important, and also us taking the time to like really look into our environment and to make those choices, because our environment is based off of our choices at this point in time in our life. I mean, if you're still 13, 12, 11, 10, whatever, then I understand, and praise God you're watching this show at that age. But many of those that are watching this, they're adults, and your environment is really based off of your own choice, your own decision, who you want to hang around with and who you want to be near. And so I'm glad that you brought it back to that, because you know habits come from, some people think that habits just come from willpower alone, but that's not the full story, right? The spaces that we live in and the way that we feel each day have a big impact on our choices, right? And when it comes down to the things that we do, James Clear, he stated in Atomic Habits, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so it's the systems that you've created inside yourself based off of his thought process and my thought process after reading that. It's the systems that you've created or that you've adopted. Those are the ones that you're going to generally fall into. Those are going to become your habits at the most granular level, right? Um, in the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 15:33, it gave us understanding that we should not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. So, if you hang around people that are of quote unquote bad company, it corrupts your character. This is a part of environment. And once again, James Clear also stated that the environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. So where we are in life makes a huge difference. And I like that you stated that, Mike, when you talked about when you used to live in West Palm versus where you're living right now. And there was a difference on, the things that you saw, the things that you experienced, and only you would be able to explain that at a higher level. But it's that this environment has such a great effect on us as people. The culture is shaped within inside of an environment, and and so you could be black or white, but if you're brought up in a specific type of environment, you may actually act differently than some of your cousins, brothers, and whatnots that live on the other side of the tracks, so to speak. And so, what do we do with that? Because as we stated earlier in this show, we started talking about, it's not just it's not, when we grow, when we've grown older, or when we come from the youth age, a lot of this stuff is the narrative that was given to us. This is what was written inside of us. It's like when I told my son, especially during the time of like Trayvon Martin, I was like, listen, man, I told all the little boys, I was like, listen, we don't walk around the streets with hoodies on. Black kids with hoodies on don't do that, And maybe that could have been a touch of fear or, whatever. But in my mindset at that time, it was like, listen, um, you're old enough, to respect my word, and you're not old enough to always make crystal clear good decisions. You just haven't hit that point in your life. He was probably 10 years old. And it was something very simple, but something very simple could easily strike up. And we just had a string of black deaths, young men, and it was horrific. And so when I thought about it, I was like, listen, don't do that. Not only don't do that, but you're not going to be out at this time of the night and stuff like that. We have to be a little more cautious, especially while things are popping off the way they are. And so for him, that was me writing his narrative for him. Like I was doing that, and I could have been overriding it. I know I didn't want to underwrite it and, get a phone call. So I'd rather overwrite it. But as he gets older, he has the opportunity to rewrite it, just like I have rewritten my own narrative. Um, because there's a lot of things that I grew up with that caused me a lot of difficulty for many years of my life. And because of that difficulty, I made very specific decisions. And so it took some time for me to gain agency over my own mind, right? My own emotional construct, so that I could rewrite these narratives, because the habits that I had formed were based off of a narrative that was given to me and the emotions of days of youth. Those emotions did not serve me anymore. Neither did those old thoughts. And so habits, because environment has such a great impact on your habits, it's important for us to take time to actually consider who we are and what we do. Like, take time for that and consider this often, because environmental habits can happen so quickly that you don't even recognize them. You don't even notice them until after you've already developed them. What'd you say, bro?
Absolutely. I would even venture to say, um, they already happened, right? Like if we've spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years around, you know, the same people, most of us are in the same city. I've seen people go on vacation, but they don't really get exposure in that kind of way, probably to the resort, maybe they're on a cruise, so on and so forth. I remember I remember I went to the Dominican Republic one time, and I guess I was a little different in this kind of way. Where I when I do get to a place, I'm like, take me to the hood. That was all what I used to say. Man, take me to the hood. I want to go to the hood. And they would take me to the hood. That was just where I was comfortable being. Yeah, take me to the I was on a resort. I've had enough of this. How do I get to the hood? Here's me walking down this big uh, resort road looking for somebody on the other side of the fence to take me to the hood. And that's kind of what I did, because I wanted this exposure as much as I can. And here's the interesting flip side of it. I remember leaving the Dominican Republic. As I was leaving the Dominican Republic, there was a guy. He was there. He had been there for 3 weeks. He was leaving to go back because his mother-in-law had just came from Russia. He was going to go pick up his mother-in-law and bring her back to the resort. So this is the type of you can imagine, if you are already at a resort for 3 weeks, you're taking a plane to go to see your mother-in-law in the. I think he was somewhere out of Midwest, like Dakota or something, to go pick up his mother-in-law because she just got in and bring her back so they can get another week of. I mean, a lot of people don't do these things. And we're having this conversation in regards to what he was doing. He was like, "Well, what do you do?" And I can never forget, because I remember thinking about it. I was like, I had this Palm Beach state of mind where I was just like, I don't want any new friends. Right. And this guy, this could have changed the trajectory. We're looking back on it, like, I'm not resentful or regretful of it. However, it was just that this was the mindset that I had. I was fine going to the hood and taking me to the hood and interacting with these people in the hood, which is also good too. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I love that type of exposure. However, I was with a guy that was seemed like he was, for whatever reason, was like interested in me from the conversation that we had. But I didn't want his phone number. I didn't want this. I just had a whole way of thinking. I'm gonna get it out the mud kind of thought. That's probably what I was thinking in my mind. Who is this guy asking me what it, this type of thing? So long story short, it was an examination of the environment that I came from, and not really checking to see whether it was healthy or not. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, or it wasn't. Was it healthy? It wasn't. Let me. I can say that at this point in time, looking back, hindsight being 2020. But we get developed in it. We're indoctrinated into these environments. We develop in these environments. We are biased to see what's exactly going on in these bias, and we reject the information when given. I thought about it yesterday. I call it willful ignorance. What is willful ignorance? It's when someone is vested in their identity. They're invested in it. They get payoffs, whatever they are, for this different identity. And this is where you get this, because there's no lack of information out there, right? But however, there's a lack of wisdom going on. So because of the lack of wisdom, because we reject this, this is why a lot of people end up where they are. So you got to get there. And then the next, so that's the awareness portion of it. Then you
Let me
need to,
touch on something before you go to the next
well,
piece.
not, go ahead.
Yeah, just a part about that in the reward system, and I don't know exactly what your thought process was behind that, but like biologically, there's a dopamine release within our habits, and so when I hear him talking about that, I hear him talking about your brain actually rewarding you for the habits that you're keeping, and like you actually feel better in life, like you feel like you've accomplished something when you may not have done anything but go backwards because your habit may not have been in harmony with who you are or who you desire to be. But because it was a habit, you get this dopamine release, and you have this feel good feeling, this aura that comes about you that makes you think what you are doing is the right thing. So go ahead, Mike. I wanted to
We
throw
got
that
to,
in there.
and we have to chew on that, right? Like we have to chew on the fact that you get this dopamine hit from rejecting information. Like I sure showed them, I'm 10 toes down. I'm whatever. Like this is you gotta, like, it made you feel good. And there's also the negative effect, because when you walk away from it, this is the hindsight 2020 part. Is like, what was I thinking? Right? I don't know. No, I don't know how long it lasts, but the more you become aware, the longer that part lasts, and the quicker that it happens. So it's like I did this thing, I got that quick dopamine hit, and then it may be seconds after, or maybe whatever after. And that's why I think it's awesome for a person. Here's a part of this awareness part, to go back and apologize, or to actually, when you reflect, and not, you don't have to apologize to that person or whatever, but it helps. I think it does help to actually to speak it, to go back and say, you know what you what we had that conversation the other day, and I rejected it. And man, you was right. I tell the brother all the time. We had a conversation a long time ago about my supervisor when I was working with the city, and he was like, "Brother, I read this part in the Bible, and it says that you need to, what was it? Who knows?" But it was like, you need to respect this person. That's the quotable part of it. And I was just like, man, I can't stand the brother said that to me, because I was so vested in this this identity. And then later on down the line, I'm just like, yeah, the brother was right, And I told the brother a couple years ago that, hey, brother, when you did that, yeah, hey, you was right. It makes a difference, and it adds to respect to people. Whenever I see people come back and say, Mike, you said X, X, and O. I just couldn't believe it at the time, but then all of a sudden later, it makes it changes something. And man to man, that it just made that accountability, that agency, as the brother was talking about last week, and we brought up this week, is there, that changes. So you want to pay attention to that. I want to go into the second piece. So once you become aware, now it's acceptance, right? Like I've been doing this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And it got me up to this point. So I'm not mad at it. It's a I have our habits, and when it's surrounded by environments, are survival mechanisms. Like I said, there's things in place in these environments: shame, insult, guilt, the need to be right. These people are putting it off on you. When I started getting healthy the first time, I came down. I used to weigh 280 something pounds, right? When I got to about 210, 215, my mother started looking at me crazy. Are you sick? You're like, what? Like, this is my mother. Like, are you, is something wrong? Look what you're doing. She saw muscles popping out. Look at them ugly things popping out of your body. This is what this was her thought process. She said it. I remember another young lady. I was
Oh
at I
my
was at
god.
the job site, and she was, she was healthy in the other sense, right? And she was like, "Ooh, I don't like that. I don't like how you getting skinny. This, that, like, is something wrong with you?" I mean, these are the things that when you are actually getting healthy, you will hear these things from people who may love you. This is your environment, but this is shames, insults, guilt, the need to be right. There was nothing wrong with my mother. My mother loved me. She loved me as much as a mother could. However, when people start to see these changes and the identities, and this will happen any kind of way. I'm showing you this is in regards to weight, right? So this is as something that's tangible that you can see. Think about when you start to change mentally. I can't be this person no more. I'm not saying I was a bad person, but I'm not this person anymore. Imagine if you're in a relationship with someone because that person attracted this other person, right? But this person, whatever results I was getting from this, because we all have receipts, whether we want to believe it or not. You got a receipt. You're demonstrating, right? I say there's three levels that people have. Hopefully you're aligned on three of them. You're teaching, preaching, or demonstrating. Some people are teaching, and the preaching doesn't match up to the teaching, or the preaching doesn't match up, or the teaching doesn't match up to the preaching. And sometimes, and the worst part is when the teaching and preaching don't match up to the demonstration, right? You're walking a certain kind of way, you're talking a certain kind of way, but you're walking a different. This is what the kids pick up on. Your kid's gonna tell you this. Oh, he wasn't a good father. Looked like he was. He was out here doing what he was doing, but man, he wasn't a good father. He used to treat me so mean, or he didn't pay attention to me. Whatever. You're out here demonstrating in the streets this money that you're getting and grinding, but your kids are suffering at home, right? And these could be in society's thoughts in our environment, laudable undertakings. These could be righteous undertakings. But your kid's looking at you like, I didn't see that person. This is what when he got home, it was it was disruptive, right? It was domination. It wasn't dominion. It was like he was trying to dominate. He didn't want to just have dominion. He wanted to dominate. Like it was a whole different thing. So teaching, preaching, and demonstration. But this can happen in any context of life. Accept this. I'm not here. I like some of these identities because I know how to point you out. I know exactly where to take you. And there's other people out there that know exactly where to take you to once you have committed to these different identities. So I'm not saying whether it's good or it's bad. I was thinking that Napoleon said something about religion that was like, I told Beethoven. Napoleon said, um, he said, I like religion. It keeps the poor people from killing us rich people. Right. That's that's what he said, because we know exactly how to point you in that direction. You want to talk? We'll go that direction. I got a good understanding of it all. We can go that way, but I know exactly where to put you. I'm not here to change anyone's world views, but once you have adopted and you're committed to these world views, you're easily guided into a place. One that's so. But so accept these different things. You can't shift while you're defending. And then the last thing, and this is what sets you free. Dre calls it the relief doctrine, right? Dre Tell is awesome. He calls the Bible. He says it's not the Bible. It's your history. It's your culture, right? So this a part of habits, a part of lifestyle is your culture. So you need to gain exposure. This is what's going to bring relief, is the information, is the exposure. So once you are aware of it, right, your habits, once you accept that these were my habits, which developed your lifestyle and your character, like the brother spoke about willpower, right? You're willingly doing these things. You don't even need willpower at this point. The habits turns it. You want to be willingly doing these things. The you want to accept these things. You want to gain this exposure, and excuse me, this part is the willing part. Are you willing to change? That's all you need. You don't, we people have different words for whatever you want to, I say whatever you want to call it, but are you willing? And then once you become willing, once you say that I am willing to change or reframe these different things or how I look at these things, now we can get into the commitment part, right? And you can do it from a place of, huh, fr- from a healthy place, right? The journey of success is really just, making these healthy decisions. And to me, the success is not a destination, right? It's not a goal. We're going to get past all that because once you get there, there's someplace else to go. So, I just wanted to, you get on this journey of being willing and to accept these things, and then you're committed to these things, and everything. And once you become healthy, whatever that is, for me, I said I made it simple. I'm obedient and I'm submissive. That's it. I'm obedient and I'm submissive to the Most High. And after the obedience, submissive of my primary, everything comes along with it because I can easily shed things, right? I can hold two different ideals in my mind that don't agree and say, huh, and take a step back and like really observe it for what it is and say, huh, okay, this is, you know, Pastor Troy has a song called Vice Versa. Go check that out. You go check out Vice Versa where he say, I'm flipping everything. He goes to the extreme of flipping it, his ideology. But once you can start to see these things from a place of, no shame, no, insult, no guilt, and I don't have to be right. So now I'm stepping outside of this way, and I can use decorum, right? I can use decorum to navigate these different avenues. That's why you spoke about, or I spoke about, and you were saying we can talk about it. 45th Street versus I can still go to 45th Street. I still go to 45th Street because my brother lives over there, and I manage a property over there, and I could walk around. I can have conversation with different people. I can notice this, what's going on over here, so on and so forth. And I can have the decorum while I'm there, and I'm still me. And I can come to Palm Beach Gardens and I can have the decorum here, and I'm still me. It doesn't matter. So you could put me in the gated community, you could put me on 45th Street, you could put me in the country in Jamaica, and I'm gonna thrive, and because I'm submissive and obedient to whatever it is, and that supersedes it all.
There you have it. Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to being healthy, I think that's at the end of the day, it's going to come down to wherever you identify yourself as, you know, as far as health goes, and whether you take the short road to get to that or the long road. I agree with you that there needs to be time for you to you should research it. You should know what you're standing on, because if you don't know what you're standing on, then you'll fall. A man that has nothing to stand for will fall for anything, right? And so that is the essence of being healthy, is knowing what you're standing on and why you're standing on that, and why that that is healthy to you. As far as it goes for like habits, environments, they definitely help to shape the habits that we form, and these habits can become our lifestyle. And changing habits can take a stretch of thought process. And once again, it's going to challenge the way that you think about yourself. It's going to challenge the individual that you identify as. And I think that once we come up, and I don't really mean identify as, because that term is kind of far from me. I guess I'm using it. It is a term that is popular at this point in time, but it's just really about your identity. And I like just using identity, because whatever your identity is, it makes a difference in which way your mind is thinking, which way your emotions are flowing, which way your body is moving, and the activation of your body. And so, for us to be able to get to the place that we desire to be inside of our lives, I think that creating good habits that align with our identity make a huge difference. And as Mike stated, and as we've stated multiple times, self awareness is so very important. But once you've gotten there, you have to start self activating. Have to start putting in action what you are aware about, the changes that you want, or the things that you want to become pillars of your lifestyle. You need to make them concrete. You need to stand on those things. They need to become the reason, the bridge that brought you over, so to speak. That's what they must become. I'll put this out there, just so we can tap into energy just a little bit. I know we've kind of like sprinted through energy here and there, but I want to put this out there: lower friction, higher follow through. So just want to put that out there for you all. I know we're going to close soon. And what I mean by that is like activation energy. I think Barr and Sharton had wrote about this back in like 1999. And activation energy is basically, it's reducing the amount of activation energy it takes for you to do whatever it is, to do an action. That's what it is. So if you can reduce the amount of energy it takes to do whatever it is that you want to do, or to become whatever it is that you want to become, the likelihood of you doing what you want to do, or you becoming what you want to become, is greater. Because sometimes the activation energy is the only thing that stops us from doing whatever it is. For instance, you want to go to the gym so you can work out because you believe that going to the gym will make you healthier. Okay. So when you get up in the morning, let's just use that as an example. You get up in the morning and you want to go to the gym. But when you get up in the morning, you're tired, you're groggy. So then you start to think about it. As you lay in the bed, you start to think, I'm too tired to get up. If only I had a cup of coffee. And then you think about it. Well, the coffee is inside the cupboard. The cup is on the other side. The sugar is over here. I got to go and I have to boil. I have to turn on the machine for the coffee. Once you start to put all of those different steps in line, you decide, you know what? Forget the coffee. And when you say forget the coffee, it's like saying forget the gym. And when you say forget the gym, your idea of being healthy just went out the window one more time. So reducing the activation energy in this case may be setting up your coffee machine to automatically come on at a certain time. So when you wake up in the morning, you smell the coffee and you realize all you have to do is walk to the pot and pour the coffee. That's a reduction of activation energy, and it increases the likelihood of you actually making it to the gym, which increases the likelihood of you becoming healthier according to your own identity. And so these are like some things that can be a challenge, but it helps you to navigate your way into the lifestyle that you desire, because your old habits every single day are kicking your butt. And so what I learned, it was all about habit stacking. And so this would be what I considered, this would be tapping into like habit stacking. And why do we do that, or why would I use that, is because there's certain things that I want to do, but I don't want to do, because doing them is not normal to me. But I want it to be normal to me because that's a part of the identity that I want to live by. And what I'm by habit stacking, or by reducing activation energy, what I'm doing is I'm giving myself an opportunity to reduce decision fatigue. And what I mean by that, decision fatigue, is basically I have to make so many decisions that it costs me too much brain power to actually do the thing that will help me become healthier. It's too much. I got to think about the clothing that I'm going to wear before I go to the gym, the coffee, the pre-workout. I got, oh, this is the shoes that I'm gonna, it's too much. It's too much to think about which book I'm going to read, where I'm going to read the book, which chair, at what time of the day. It's too much. So the decision fatigue sets in and it draws my brain power. I get a headache from it. And I've had people actually come to me and say that they get headaches when they start thinking about reading a book. Getting headaches because they're thinking about reading a book. And this is all based off of routines, right? That's what this is based off of routines. So, because we are fatigued in our brain, we end up not doing the thing that we want to do because it's drawn our energy away. And so now, our old school narrative, the environment that we grew up in, it stays written and etched inside of our heart. And we once again are stuck in the way that we don't want to be anymore. Now, I'm just stating this from the stance of if you're looking to change your habits, lower friction, higher follow through, make your days a little easier. When you've got the energy, prep for the gym, even if it's for tomorrow. When you've got the energy, go find the book, set it next to the appropriate chair, clear off the area, get a bottle of water, have it set and ready, or your favorite beverage, whatever it is, have it set and ready so that when the time comes, an alarm goes off and you just go and get your drink and go sit in the chair. By creating this space inside of your life to actually do the thing that you desire to do, you will lower the friction, you will increase the opportunity of follow through. And after doing that, after committing yourself to doing it so many times, you will form a habit. You'll work out the neuroplasticity inside of your brain and it will become a habit. Do it enough and you might not ever stop doing it. That's a suggestion. Take it. Consistency over intensity.
Good luck.
It's
Good
work,
luck with
y'all.
all. Hey, good luck with all that, guys. Raise your standards. Raise your standards, and a lot of this stuff is just gonna come with it. And because I've read a lot of these different books. Thousands of people. These are bestsellers, and habits still remain the same. So I think the best thing to do is figure out, because you got to change on the identity level, whatever that looks like, and then becoming committed to it, right? Become committed to your change. Um, be willing to change, and then become committed to it, and everything else will just come with it. You're going to get past it on a biological level. Mentally, it'll come around. You're not going to have to be thinking so much. You're just going to be getting right into it if you change it at an identity level. Your identity shapes your emotion. We already know that most people make decisions based on their emotion. We justify our decisions with logic, and then that logic becomes the habit. Though that's the step by step, brick by brick, right? We talk about this gym, everything. Thousands of people were going to the gym in January, and by now it's fell off, right? So there's a reason for that year after year, and that's because at an identity level, they have not changed. So you get caught up in an emotional level of I'm going now, I'm going this, I'm going to do this, I feel like doing this, I feel like doing that, because you have at an identity level you have identified that you are out of shape, you are big bone, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, based on how you were indoctrinated and what's going on in the zeitgeist. So that's my ending portion of it. I think this was well spent. What were we at, an hour and 15 minutes in? Appreciate you all. It's 5:17. You all be safe. Have a safe and enjoy your weekend, man. I love you.
Take care, y'all.
Peace.